Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com Mailbag podcast brought to you by Blue Water Climate Control. Glad to have you with us on this Friday. Obviously, a ton to get to. What a crazy week it's been for Tennessee. And we'll jump around, Jesse, Austin, Rob here, and I'll jump around with some of these questions. So I'm going to skip the first one and go right to Smoky Man 15. He wants to know, where did all this juice come from this week? Anybody want to jump in there and explain what has created a week like we hadn't seen in recruiting before, or at least I hadn't seen in recruiting before?
I don't think anybody knows, Brent. I had one staff member call me last week, very frustrated with the lack of traction they had, and it was a prominent staff member. And a week later, I said, "Well, that escalated quickly." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't think anybody on staff saw this to this degree. I mean, landing one guy, but to see it snowball the way it has, and hey, that's a credit to the relationships that the staff's built, and getting the right guys that have pull, that have have an impact on other recruits around them that are high profile guys. I think just helps."
Yeah, I think credit goes to a guy. Clearly he's pushing it out on Twitter that he's like the greatest recruiter, but I do think that the swell kind of happened after Kamar Wilcoxon joined the class. Tennessee had felt like they were in a pretty good spot with Dylan Brooks, but for him to make that decision on Sunday was a bit of a surprise, just because he had been pretty adamant, hey, I want to kind of take some more visits. And yet he goes and jumps in the boat. There's some guys on staff that obviously think extremely highly of him, believe he could be the highest rated or the best commit that they've had since this class. Wilcoxon the next day, and the fact that he was a former Florida commit multiple times, not sure where he was on Alabama's board, but Tennessee gets him. And then he's out there just immediately spamming every top recruit, that even though they haven't gotten some of those guys, I think it helped kind of accelerate the process for some guys that Tennessee was in a pretty good spot with. So Julian Nixon says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get in the boat. So Tyon Evans says, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and get in the boat. And then Terence Lewis had no intention 2 weeks ago of probably committing to Tennessee this early. The Vols felt like they had a real shot there. They felt like it was a 3-horse race with Texas A&M and Nebraska. But Lewis, again, was adamant to multiple people from multiple recruiting services that he wanted to take some visits, that he wanted to kind of get back to Lincoln, get back to Knoxville, get back to, Texas A&M. But this swell happens. He's on the phone with all these guys. He feels like his relationship with Niedermeyer, who would be his position coach, is key. Boom, he commits, and to cap, Brooks, and then actually land a guy that's even probably a more impressive prospect than Lewis is pretty remarkable.
Rob, it's interesting. Momentum's funny. It's hard to get. Then when you get it, how long can you ride the wave? And for Tennessee to ride it all week long is crazy. The question now is, can they keep riding it through the month of May? Because as Austin said, this is a week that we haven't seen.
It's unprecedented.
Yeah, it's crazy
this time of year. And I think it goes without saying, it's remarkable that they're doing this during, essentially a dead period. Kids haven't been on campus in over a month. It's not like they, came up for the spring game or were blown away by what they saw. And I think, a real testament to this staff, to them being creative, and also them getting a bunch of guys on campus early in their high school careers.
Yeah. But what's crazy about this is Tyon Lewis has never been on campus, has never met with the staff on campus. Lewis hadn't been here in a year. Wilcoxon hadn't been here in a year. It's kind of crazy that those are three of the guys that they did get in the boat right here.
Well, I think it's guys that have – you're right. Evans has never been here outside of just driving through. But the other two have at least seen campus. So, once you've seen an academic facility and an indoor complex, they're all kind of the same. To me, a lot of that comes down to, have you seen it? Yes, you've seen it. And then the relationships that they've built. And, with a guy like Tyon Evans, that one's been, in the hopper for a while. He talked about doing a video a couple of weeks ago. That's why he had that committed graphic already, on him. And like I said, you had, Coach Graham, Coach Ossovet, two guys that have been leading the charge in trying to get Tyon Evans in the boat. Neither one of those knew he was going today. Like they would talk to him last night. They were pushing him. And then he didn't say, hey, guys, I'm going to commit in an hour. He said, look at Twitter, and boom, it was out there for the masses.
All right, let's go to Vol I Am, who's got a series of questions here that all kind of ties some of this together, and then obviously jumps into some stuff about the college football season. Let's start with the recruiting stuff he has. Biggest recruiting coup over the last 10 days and the biggest name to watch in the next 10 days. AP, I'll start with you. Who's the biggest coup out of this group?
Ooh, I'm not going to say it's Dylan Brooks because they had built such a nice relationship there. I think it's getting Lewis into the boat, as Jesse said. Getting him into the boat when he's not been here. I mean, Brooks has been here several times since Lewis was here that one time on a quick trip last summer. So to me, getting him in the boat was massive. And in the next 10 days, that'll take you to Mother's Day because, this is May 1st. So any of the kids from Baltimore, if they were to end up picking Tennessee, I think that would be a big coup because it's so tough to pull kids out of that area. More so than
you'd be beating Bama for Aaron Willis too.
Yeah, and more so than Caden Salter, who I think I personally think we have him, underrated at Rivals. But at the end of the day, I think, beating out those position guys over, beating out, Baylor and Auburn. Again, Baylor played in the Sugar Bowl last year, and Auburn,
Well, I think what you're saying with Auburn, but to beat out Alabama and to beat out a Missouri kid, to beat out Maryland and those guys for those players is obviously significant if you can beat out those guys and go for there. Let me go to the next part of his question here. Do you anticipate all 14 SEC teams participating and playing this fall? And could you see a scenario where conference teams have any realignment following this unprecedented year to be more financially sound? Rob, let's start with you. You think everybody's going to play in the conference?
I've said it before. I don't know what it looks like as far as fans in the stands or limits on seating capacity, but I don't see how they don't play just from a financial standpoint. Talking with people at the university, the financial impact of not having a football season is just the ripple effects would be tremendous. You're talking about television contracts just to start with. You're going to have to. It's not even an if scenario; it's a certainty. If they don't have football, they're going to be eliminating a lot of other non-revenue sports.
Yeah, I think so. But I do think it's going to be interesting, Jesse, to see if look, the SEC, as we mentioned in the War Room, is the fact of the matter. When you look at the SEC, it's more regional. The ACC stretches from New York to Miami. You got a lot of different variables state to state in there making decisions, whereas the SEC is tied into a much more of a regional deal. So I could see the entire SEC playing, but would it be that the entire SEC is playing, or the ACC is playing, or even the Pac-10? What's California going to do versus Arizona, Oregon, Washington? I think that's part of the unknown. And we had, a story this week where an unnamed AD said, a couple of unnamed ADs said, hey, we're going to, if we have to play without a team in our conference, we'll play without a team in our conference. Will that really happen?
I'm very skeptical that'll happen within a conference. Now, there may be the situation that you just laid out in terms of the Pac-12 versus the SEC. But again, that gets back to a statement I made on a previous podcast that, without kind of a sports commissioner for, college football, these are some of the difficult decisions that are going to have to be made because these states are not on uniform timelines. Even some gyms in Georgia are technically open, but a lot of gyms are not, and what happens next week in Tennessee when some gyms start to get open? Will your local YMCA be open, or are they going to kind of continue to be careful? So it continues to be kind of dealt with on a state-by-state basis. Again, it's not a sexy answer, but right now it's just we don't know. And we won't know probably until the end of May, likely beginning of June. And if we don't have clarity by then I think the season as we have currently constituted is in trouble. And that's when these A, B, C, D, and E contingency plans start getting, really laid out and kind of hammered home on, all right, if we get to this date, this is what happens then. If we get to X date, that's what happens now.
And clearly everybody wants to play. I mean, that's why you're seeing all these schools saying, their plan is to have students back on campus. Part of that's for athletic purposes as well. That's not the sole reason, but part of that is an athletic statement, but none of that is a guarantee at this point in time. As Jesse said, I don't know is the better answer. We'll know more in 6 weeks or so. 423 Volunteer wants to know, Austin, any new news on JT Daniels? What's his time frame? Also, what's the likelihood of Tony Grimes and Mims? Over and under on 3.5 total 5 stars in the signing class when it's all said and done. Go.
We'll start with JT Daniels. Time frame, I don't know. I don't think the kid knows. I mean, because of the situation we're in, it's not like he's trying to get here for first session summer school and go ahead and start going with other kids. So he's got a little more time on his hands than maybe, you normally would have. So I think he'll take his time. I still maintain LSU and Tennessee are the top 2. Michigan and Oregon are right there lurking in the shadows as a potential destination for JT. Michigan finished 2 there coming out of high school, but I'm not sure that they are the odds-on favorite here as he gets a reboot on his decision from a couple of years ago.
Tony Grimes?
Grimes, I don't see Tennessee ending up with Tony Grimes. I think Tennessee actually has a better shot with Mims than they do Grimes, and I think Mims would be a massive undertaking to land him. But when you start pulling in some of his buddies, again, some kids that they're going to listen to their buddies, but at the end of the day, Amarius is going to make the decision best for him. But I do think it definitely helps Tennessee. It puts them in the game for a week ago. And then over under 3.5? Is that right?
Yeah, 3.5 5 stars. It depends on who gets a 5th star, who gets. I mean, that's all up for debate at this point in time.
Well, you got to remember now. And I mean, I'm gonna get on my soapbox here a little bit. It's so funny, 24/7 lets come out and say, well, so and so is a 5-star, but they have them ranked as a 4-star at the 24/7 rankings. They have a kid a 4-star, but they're going to claim whatever's convenient. So let's go ahead and claim the composite here, as I give the air quotes, which is a combination of ESPN Rivals and 24/7. I think Tennessee ends up with 3. They've already got 2. I think they can land 1 more.
All right, let's go to Jake Dog 13. Ingram Dawkins have the Vols on top. What position are the Vols recruiting Marley for? Cayman Marley for?
Ingram Dawkins, I won't say Tennessee's on top, but I think that they're in the mix with the top teams there. I think they're a huge contender in his recruitment. As far as Cayman Marley, Tennessee's going to recruit him as an athlete, let him get here and figure it out. I know what Gritty says. I know Tennessee likes the kid, as a guy that could potentially really help on defense, but they're not going to tell the kid he won't get a shot on offense because he is very talented on that side of the ball.
Dagley 07, if the Vols keep recruiting at this level, are there some commits that may be forced to look around, Jesse? It's been discussed before, but would the Vols take both Evans, who they have in the boat now, and Cody Brown? Seems like both of those guys really want to be Vols. We've already seen Evans jump in. And where do the Vols stand with Cory Foreman?
I mean, well, they're not in the mix with Cory Foreman, but not yet at least. I mean, but, he's the former Clemson commit who seems to have some ties with LSU, obviously Southern Cal, and then Georgia. As for the other 2 questions, I think yes and yes. I mean, decommitments are just kind of part of the game these days. Tennessee had 15, I believe, a year ago. Some that they didn't want to lose, some that they, were fine with kind of seeking other greener pastures. But when you look at some of the other guys that are still out there, the fact that I think specifically Tennessee continues to recruit guys like Cayman Marley, Rucker, and some other guys, in terms of defensive backs. They already have a lot of defensive backs in this class. And so the math just doesn't shake out in terms of needs elsewhere that you're going to load up on, 3 more defensive backs when you already have so many guys committed currently. And, AP answered the other question on the board earlier. They would still take Cody Brown. Now, I personally, I think that would be an interesting decision, again, because of some needs elsewhere. They don't have any offensive linemen committed yet. They still need some help, I think, at defensive line, particularly on the interior. But they would. I mean, they like Cody Brown a lot. Perhaps AP can speak to this. Maybe Evans's decision at least slows down Brown's decision, who could have committed this week as well, may still. But I think the fact that, he does have some interest in Georgia, but Georgia maybe hasn't reciprocated that. Perhaps now he says, hey, I'll wait a little bit and kind of see how this plays out.
I mean, I think it's possible that he definitely slows things down. But I do know that, Tennessee was, in contact with Cody when Tyon decided to surprisingly pop in and get in the boat. And so Cody was well aware of who Tyon Evans was well before Tyon ever officially committed. So I think that, Tennessee would definitely take both. The question is, would Evans, Brown, and Wright, would they all three be okay with, being a triumvirate in this class at the running back position? That's a tough ask in today's time, Brent. It just doesn't happen very often, just because, everybody wants the ball.
Well, and everybody knows who everybody is because they've seen them at camps. You got to remember back in 1997, Travis Henry had no idea who Travis Stevens was, Jamal Lewis was. Dominic Stevenson had never seen Jamal Lewis at a camp somewhere. Tennessee's telling Dominic Stevenson, hey, you're going to be our focal running back. Jamal Lewis is going to grow into a fullback. And then Dominic Stevenson got 2 practices at running back and went to linebacker. Nobody knew who anybody was back then. It's totally different now because of what we're seeing on social media and all the camps that are out there. Rob, this is to you. Our Burger wants to know, with Steve Forbes getting the Wake job, what could be the trickle-down effect for Tennessee in terms of could a Tennessee assistant land on the ETSU job? How could that affect Tennessee recruiting if that were the case?
I think Des Oliver and Mike Schwartz will both, certainly without question be interested in it. And I would guess that both of them will be majorly in play. Recruiting wise, if Oliver is not on Tennessee staff, then that's a big blow. We're talking about he's the lead guy with Jabari Smith. That would hurt Tennessee for sure. He's the lead guy with Harrison Ingram. I'm not saying Tennessee would be out of those, but there would definitely need to be work done on the recruiting front. Kim English is the main guy with Kennedy Chandler, although Oliver is involved there, and English is definitely the guy with Banchero. So I think Kim's too young, and I don't know what Oliver or Schwartz's chances are, but I think that they will be. I'll be surprised if they're not really in the mix, assuming ETSU does hire a high major assistant, and also one thing to keep in mind that I think will work in their favor. There are a lot of high level boosters at Tennessee that also have ties to ETSU that will I think probably help facilitate them being majorly in play. And I also wouldn't discount the fact that Philip Fulmer has a lot of ties to that athletic department as well, helping them reboot the football program, and obviously knows Scott Carter from his time at Tennessee.
Hard Hat Vol wants to know, what players do you think will get the most snaps at tight end behind Pope this year? Seems like a big question mark behind Austin Pope. Who's going to be the tight end of record, Jesse? Who are you going with?
By default, I think it's going to be Princeton Fant. I don't think you can hypothesize that Warren, who I do think is going to play, because Tennessee played a lot of 3 guys last year. Andrew Craig got a lot of snaps. I think Warren's going to be in the mix. Maybe Sean Brown, the wild card there, because he practiced 2 days in the spring, is Jordan Allen, who's a former tight end, flipped over, played outside linebacker, now back at tight end. But Fant, has the most experience, even though that's not a lot. So I would go there.
All right, let's go to James 0624 for everybody here. With the new NCAA guidelines for athletes profiting off their name and likeness set to take place in 21-22, how hard is Tennessee selling their player brand building to recruits currently? Seems like Tennessee is one of the first schools to get out in front of this by partnering with that company, which, by the way, multiple people have partnered with that company whose name escapes me right now. Also, do you think it might play a role in roster retention? If I'm a guy at a Power 5 school that is a fringe guy that's right or above or below the line, but that school's pushing my brand and I'm getting the profit off of that, it makes me think twice about finding a new home. Would it be beneficial for depth and practice purposes? I don't know about all the last part of that. I think
they're pushing a fringe guy's brand. That's not the way that stuff's going to work.
No, I don't think so at all. And I think that's going to be the fascinating part of this is how does it work? I think there's still so many question marks out there in terms of the management of this. but who all is going to be, who all is going to have the opportunity to really make money off their likeness? I mean, is the right guard versus the quarterback? Certainly the quarterback's going to have a chance to make more money off of his likeness than another position is. I wonder too, Rob, however, from a college basketball standpoint, how this ruling affects the G League and what the G League is selling to the high school kids. Hey, you don't have to go to school. We're going to pay you a salary. You can make up to, quote, $500,000 with endorsements and all these things. Where's that dollar figure going to be for a top 5 basketball player, particularly when you bring in the shoe company element into the college basketball world? Does that negate some of the G League's movement to try to get some of those kids into their league instead of the college for 1 year?
I think it will for kids that, the motivation is strictly financial, to go to the G League and start, helping mom out, with the rent, the electricity bill. And I think, there's always going to be some kids that just have no interest in, darkening the door of a college classroom. So, I don't think there's any doubt that it will help, but I still think you're going to lose some kids who just, have no interest in school when they get started, trying to be a pro basketball player.
What do you think, Jesse, is the biggest challenge in managing this? Because it seems very complex because, you've got schools who have deals with certain companies. They have parameters that you can't have competitors in there. You're going to have companies not want to do deals with schools, want to do deals with just athletes only. What's the hardest part you think that's going to be for schools to manage? It's not the NCAA, but the school part of it.
Well, I was going to say the macro deal with me is just how real or I don't want to say disingenuous, but how interested is the NCAA in really making this work? Because the parameters that they laid out yesterday were full of so much confusing legally parsed out by, politicians and schools and shoe companies and all that to really break it down, I don't think there's going to be any clarity for many months on that issue.
Well,
the school, in terms of the shoe deal, that's a great, in just one specific thing. So if Tennessee is a Nike school, and let's say one of the recruits that they just got, let's say, Terence Lewis has been rocking, Under Armour or Adidas down at Northwestern, and now, Chaminade. What if they're like, hey, we want to sponsor you? How does that, who kind of has the licensing agreements there? Does the school went out, or is a player still allowed to kind of rock his stuff? That's just a one of many, many unanswered questions in the stuff they released just earlier this week.
Rob,
that to me is the biggest one. Brent, you mentioned it. Like, what if First Tennessee obviously is a huge sponsor of Tennessee, the Vol Network, all that. What if Home Federal Bank wants to sponsor the wants to do a deal with a quarterback? What do you do there? Just like Jesse was saying, I think it's it's a huge problem that they're going to have to iron out.
Well, and I think that it feels like sort of what Jesse was saying. I'm going to piggyback and agree with that. It feels like the NCAA said, okay, we're going to give you this, okay, and then everybody's got to figure it out. And because it's so complex, it's just delaying it more. So, I don't know how realistic it is for that thing to go into effect in January with everything that still has to be ironed out about that. Who's going to try to delay it with the political angles and all those things in there? I think it's going to be really fascinating to watch over the course of the coming months when everybody picks apart all the questions that you have to answer and look at and things that people have not thought of at this point in time. All right, Austin, to you, Go Vols 21. Over under 3.5 commits in the next 2 weeks, post Lewis and Evans. Does the Evans commit? We've already talked about the Cody Brown thing. So let's just go to 3.5 commits in the next 2 weeks. You taking the over or the under?
Over.
Wow.
Whoa, hey, Pete, throwing chum in the water.
Sending everybody ablaze. Going to need a bigger boat, Rob Lewis, is what you're going to need.
It doesn't feel like 98 hubs. It feels like 94 when they started to build towards 98.
Oh, you know me. My glass is half empty on everything in life, AP.
Oh, no doubt. Doomsday hubs.
All right, let's go to Nashville 615. Look at the elite teams of college football right now: LSU, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, maybe Georgia, Oklahoma, et cetera. The one thing they have in common is offensive explosion and mobile quarterbacks. I'm not sure I buy all that. Are Pruitt and Chaney willing to make the changes needed like Saban, Coach O, and others have made over the last few years to reach the next level? The Vols offense isn't terrible, but all these other teams are trying to put up 50 points every game they touch the field. I'm not saying fire Chaney by any means, but pro style only goes so far. What does pro style even mean anymore? You know, I don't remember Jake Fromm being a guy that runs around everywhere. Joe Burrow certainly made more of his living by throwing the football than running. Same for Tua. So it's not like Lamar Jackson was running around for those teams that he just mentioned. I think it's about just getting better quarterback play.
Well, I think the key is that those schools, and Georgia did not do this a year ago, but they did do it the previous season when Chaney was the offensive coordinator there. It's getting your playmakers the ball in space. That's what all those schools do. I mean, that's what Alabama did with Tua. That's what Joe Burrow did with LSU stud receivers.
And they spread it out more too with those 5 wide receiver sets a year ago at LSU.
It's getting the ball
mismatches,
playmakers the ball in space, and that's something that I do think Tennessee needs to do a better job of. I mean, they made some offensive improvements, but they were still not a good offense a year ago. On the whole.
Yeah, I mean, on the whole. And I think it started, Rob, with guys with the quarterback position and the inconsistency. I mean, there were guys who were open at times. They weren't perfect at the receiver spot or at the other spot. But it starts with finding a guy who can deliver the football. Joe Burrow delivered the football. LSU did a great job schematically getting guys open, but Burrow threw it on time and delivered the football. So it goes hand in hand with each other. Tennessee's got to do a better job of getting it in the guy's hands in an immediate or in a faster fashion here. Let's go for let's go to Stock 100. Rob, update. Have you heard anything on the uniform question from a couple of weeks ago about making the colors match?
I'm sorry, I have not. I've dropped the ball on that one. I will get on that. I'm going to make myself a note.
All right. Brent wants to know top 5 favorite Tennessee players to cover and why. Listening to Billy Ratliff made me think of this question because you talked about how much you like covering Billy Ratliff. I think I've named
Arian Foster's at the top.
No,
sure.
No, Arian Foster talking in a foreign or whatever that language he tried to create doesn't do anything. Eric Berry was great to cover. Al Wilson was great to cover. Billy was fantastic. A lot of guys. I mean, there's no way I can name 5.
I like Gerard Mayo a lot.
Yeah, Gerard Mayo was a good guy. By the way, hallmark moment here for Jesse. You're great on the S&P reports. Thank you for making that segment so valuable. So thanks to you, Jesse, from Stock 100 there. All right.
Jesse Love just keeps flowing.
There we go. Final
He's
question.
crapped all over me.
I know. Final question here. He didn't want anything to do with you. Last one out the gate. Vol Lover wants to know, after 2 full seasons and now working on a 3rd recruiting class, where do you put Jeremy Pruitt's chances of winning an SEC championship at some point at Tennessee? Are the chances better, in your opinion, now that you've gotten a better look at him as a head coach and how he runs the program? What are the biggest differences in Pruitt and the previous 2 head coaches that give you hope that Tennessee can get back to Atlanta in the near future?
I personally don't like the revolving door of coaches. I know that's kind of the name of the game, but I do feel like there's been probably a touch too much of that. Just because I think it's hard to build staff continuity. Okay. But I think as a coach, he has grown so much from the moment he got here, where he knew nothing about being a head coach and would tell you that. Like things that he did not know you had to do, little things, whether it be media boosters, all that stuff. He has gotten so comfortable in those settings. I think that it's only helped his cause, and he's got really quality people around him, more so now than ever before. They're recruiting at a greater level now. So if you'd asked me a year and a half ago, I would have told you I didn't know if he could win an SEC title. But now I do think he definitely can win an SEC title. But again, just to get to Atlanta, so many things have to marry together. Look, for Peyton Manning to make it there in 1997, Brent, Florida had to lose 2 times. That was for Peyton Manning. And that was the program to be, really kind of reaching its zenith almost, so to speak. It took Florida losing twice because you lost to Florida. So you have to take advantage of those games against Georgia and Florida. If you don't, it's just such an uphill battle to get to Atlanta, which gives you an opportunity to win it.
Jesse, go with you. Your thoughts.
I I would like to see year 3. I think this is going to be a pivotal season. I agree with what AP just echoed in terms of Jeremy's own personal growth. Now, obviously, the roster is starting to be built up in a fashion that Tennessee fans are more accustomed to. Can they make that next step? And so the hardest step, though, isn't going from 4 or 5 wins to 7, 8 wins. It's winning 8 wins to 10 or 11 games, and that's going to be when Jeremy's when they start really knocking off a Florida or an Alabama or a Georgia or whoever, and they do that more times than not in one season, then that's when you're going to know, hey, they can actually do it.
Rob?
I'll tackle the part about the difference between the last staff. And I mean, Austin, you know better than me on this one, but I think the biggest difference I see is the credibility he seems to have with his players. And I think that comes from his ability to be real with them, to be genuine, to, not have everything be a slogan or, some kind of motivational ploy. And I think he's very comfortable telling hard truths to kids, and not in a confrontational manner, but just, laying it out there for, where they are in the program, what they need to do, or why this is happening, why they're not playing in a fashion that Butch just, did not have the capability of doing.
Well, I think more than anything, Rob, and I think this is the point you're trying to hit on, is Jeremy just don't care. He doesn't care what you think. He doesn't care what I think. He doesn't care what Larry and Double Y thinks.
Yeah.
Butch cared about all that. He cared about what the janitor thought, about where his pen placement was on his desk. He worried way too much. This group, they're going to go out and be them, and if that means they win big, they win big. But they're going to do it their way. And if that means if they don't win big, then they know that they did it their way, and they didn't worry about what anybody else thought along the way. Naturally, at some point, you make some concessions in recruiting. He's not really done that, through 3 recruiting classes to this point. I mean, there's been a couple of times where you go a certain route, but Butch took way too many, worried about the perception, so he kid because perception was good. This year, Tennessee's got 2 kids committed in the state of Tennessee, Brent? Talking about Walker Merrill. You're talking about Elijah Howard. They may only get 2 other commitments in this state. They may only have 4, maybe. They continue to recruit the way they're recruiting.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest answer is going to be, can he keep his coordinators there? I think when you look at Butch, I think, the hiring of Bob Shoop was bad news. And had that worked out better, then maybe Butch could have won an SEC Eastern Division. I think you look at Derek Dooley, they had an offense that could have won the Eastern Division, but they had a defense that was a disaster because he hired Sal Sinceri. I think right now Jeremy Pruitt has a defense coordinator in Derek Ansley, who's a good recruiter and a good coach. I think he's got a proven guy in the SEC in Jim Chaney. And I think you got to hold that part of the continuity together as you continue to recruit and build this program if you're going to have a chance to win the Eastern Division and go to Atlanta and have a chance to compete for the SEC title. That's going to do it for this edition of the Mailbag edition of the Volquest.com podcast. I want to remind you about our good friends at Blue Water Climate Control in East Tennessee. You need a reliable heating and air system designed for your home and our climate. You need a team that's trained and held to the highest of standards. You need solutions, not sales pitches. There are many heating and air companies in East Tennessee. There's only one name that you need to remember. That's Blue Water Climate Control. Veteran-owned, family-operated. When you need a new system or a major repair, Blue Water's not going to send out a salesperson to look at things. They're going to send out an air conditioning expert who's going to come to your home, lay out the options that are best for you. That includes repairing the system you have, or maybe replacing it with a system that's affordable, upgrading your energy efficiency, and improving your indoor air quality. All options are on the table, and you'll hear from those from an air conditioning expert. They have financing, including same as cash and even rent-to-own. Call them today at 865-299-2290 or visit them at bluewaterclimatecontrol.com to make an appointment. Blue Water Climate Control is an authorized dealer for American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning, and you can follow them on Twitter at BlueH2O_climate. For Austin Price, Jesse Simonton, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend, everybody.